I think we're good to start off with the session itself. It's a pleasure to be hosting this with Wellington. And we have two wonderful guests, Monja Coen and Jayro. And we're very, very grateful for what we'll be able to explore with the two of them today. And so Wellington, I'll pass it over to you so you can kick us off.
Today, I invited a Anashoka Fellow to be here with us, Mr. Jayro Pereira. Jayro specializes on getting to know and studying African philosophy of all Afro-Brazilian religions. So he's going to kick off our meeting with a chant. Jayro. Good morning. It's a pleasure to have you with us, and I'd like to invite you to please start with our opening chant today.
Y después que explique la traducción de esas palabras que él va a hablar en Urubá. Wellington, por favor, ¿le puedes pedir a Jayro? Buenos días a todos y todas. Quisiera de hablar de qué somos y qué son ustedes. Y muchas gracias por la existencia de cada uno de ustedes. Cada uno y cada una. Yo soy Jayro Pereira, aquí del estado de Bahía. Yo estoy en la región metropolitana de El Salvador. Y entonces me dijeron que hiciera un cántico en Urubá. Y les pido perdón por mi voz, pero voy a cantar. Y el cántico dice así. La traducción quiere decir esto. Que yo los decido y los respeto, que este día mi respeto y los saludo. Déjeme cumplir la misión. Déjeme cumplir la misión de la cual Olodumare de mí me encargó. Y si el Señor de esta vida no me lo impide, Olodumare nos dé su aprobación. Olodumare, por favor, mande su bendición para nuestro trabajo. Ashe. Muchas gracias, Jayro. Gracias, Jayro. Lo que vamos a hacer es invitarles a que compartan sus ideas, reflexiones y preguntas al ir durante la ponencia. Escríbanla en la sala, la sala de chateo en español, en inglés, y al final de la sesión tendremos la posibilidad de formular esas preguntas a nuestros invitados y explorarlas junto con ustedes, con ellos, perdón. Wellington. Muy bien. Ahora vamos a empezar nuestro encuentro con nuestros queridos invitados. Y si durante las ponencias ustedes tienen alguna pregunta, por favor, escríbanla en la sala de chateo y después se contestarán al final de las charlas. Bueno, vamos a llamar a Monja Coen y a Jayro. Bienvenida, Monja Coen, y bienvenido, Jayro. Es un honor tenerlos aquí. Monja Coen, tal vez usted pueda empezar. Y si usted pudiera hablar sobre su jornada de bienestar. Solo para tener un sentido de su persona. La Monja Coen va a empezar con su charla, va a hablar un poco sobre ella y su trabajo. Y después vamos a escuchar a Jayro. Yo soy una monja zen budista de la tradición japonesa. Mi sede es en Japón. Viví 12 años en un monasterio femenino en Nagoya y trabajo aquí en San Pablo, en donde tenemos el mayor centro de tradición japonesa y de inmigración japonesa en Brasil y en el mundo. Pero yo no trabajo directamente en la colonia japonesa. Hace algunos años yo abrí una comunidad para brasileños en general, en donde enseño meditación, zen budismo y trabajo mucho en el encuentro interreligioso. Yo creo que podemos crear una cultura de paz, justicia y curación de la tierra si estamos unidos. Tenemos muchos practicantes que son profesores universitarios y que tienen una capacidad de diseminación de las enseñanzas para un grupo muy grande de personas. Tengo un canal en YouTube que tiene 2 millones de seguidores, algo reciente, y nosotros nos dimos cuenta cómo la gente persigue el bienestar. Y el bienestar es lo que yo busco, es lo que yo trato de enseñar, traducirlo para que las personas se sientan bien. Nuestra vida es corta, no vamos a hacer ella chica, sino vamos a hacer ella grandiosa. Esa es una frase de un profesor de filosofía, el profesor Cordella, con quien escribí libros. Yo escribo, tengo varios libros publicados y siempre son cuentos cortos y que provocan la reflexión de la forma como estamos viviendo y cómo podemos vivir mejor. Cuáles son nuestras angustias, nuestras aflicciones, desesperaciones. El último libro lo escribí ahora durante la pandemia y se llama Punto de recuperación. ¿Cuál es el punto en que vamos a repuntar las cosas para hacer las cosas?
Realize that we're in a rut, that we're trapped by our own emotions, by our own feelings, and how can we use those emotions and feelings to our advantage, to the advantage of our health and everybody else's health. So that's roughly what I do. Thank you so much. Coen Roshi, welcome. And now I'm going to turn it over to our dear Jayro Pereira for his opening remarks. Well, I want to tell you my name in Yoruba. I have reconnected cosmologically, existentially to the African diaspora, to the Americas. And so I have an oruko, which is a Yoruba word for my name. Ororode Olugian Karafo. Those of you who are familiar with, that means the person who's familiar with the transition, that conveys the tradition, and who digs for products in the earth, such as food, knowledge, and disseminates that knowledge. That's what I have been doing. I studied theology, philosophy, religious sciences. I hold a BA on religious sciences, and since '88, I became an Ashoka Fellow. In fact, I'd like to remind you that I joined Ashoka together with Chico Mendes, a very well-known person for defending the environment. And my work has always focused on raising awareness among society. I work with the Comunidade Terreiros, the centers here in Brazil, and making sure that people know this is not just a place where people bang their drums. It's a place for thinking, for philosophy, for sharing our outlook in the world, to share well-being, to understand the world, and to understand existence. And that's what my work has always focused on, raising awareness about this antagonical philosophy, the antagonism between Western philosophy, Cartesian philosophy, European philosophy, and African philosophy. There is an antagonism there. it's not just about the enlightened minds. It's about the minds who want to do something soon. That's the main difference between the Western Cartesian philosophy. So that's what I've been doing, raising awareness about that, about these thoughts that can lead to a different kind of existence in this cosmos, in this universe, and to unleash the potential of the role of men, women in this African vision of the world, which is to look after humankind and to look after each other.
Thank you, Jayro. So in the first part of this session together, we'll be turning this over to Monja Coen. And so Monja Coen, at this time, there's a lot happening around all of us. And the question that we wanted to put to you to start ourselves in the session was, how can we ground ourselves? How can we be more present at this time where so much is going on? And you can go in and Portuguese.
I'm sorry, I heard you in English. I started speaking English. I'd like to start with a conscious breathing practice, which is the basis for meditation. So let's sit down halfway on your chair and make sure your back is straight, your lower back, your upper back. Your upper back supports your head, which weighs 6 kilograms. So let's make sure our back is straight. Your ears should be aligned with your shoulders and your nose should be aligned with your belly button. And we can do the cosmic mudra with our hands. Right hand at the bottom, left hand on top, thumbs slightly touching. And this space here, this line you see here, is the Earth's line around the sun. That's why it's called mudra. Mudra means the position of your hands for the cosmos. And now rest your hands on your lap. We are in this cosmos, we are in this universe, or the pluriverse as it is now known, and it is in our hands. So we need to treat it delicately, carefully. We shouldn't use any strength, and it helps us see what we are like, because if you're tensed up, your hands will be tensed up. If you're too soft, your fingers will fall. There has to be a balance point between our body and our mind. And we need to do that simultaneously. We need to have our body aligned with our hands and then do a very simple breathing practice, passive breathing. You don't inhale, because when you pull your breath in, you contract your diaphragm and less air comes in. So your chest should expand in all directions, forwards, backwards, sideways. And exhale through your mouth slowly. Your exhaling should be active. You will let that air out. And it should be subtle and as slowly as possible. So let's breathe in. Open your glottis with a noise and let that air out, making a noise. Please note that when you finish exhaling, your lower abdomen contracts a little bit. You don't need to force that. It happens naturally. Again, inhale. And out. One last time. Breathe in. And out. Now close your lips and place the tip of your tongue in the roof of your mouth, right at the back of your teeth, just barely touching it. Now think of your feet, your legs, your body. which is sitting at the basis of your spine, your ischius, the bones. Remember your bones. Your bones are aligned. Your shoulders slightly back and down. Open up your diaphragm. You don't need to close your eyes, just let them rest and breathe naturally through your nostrils if you can, or if you can't, just breathe through your mouth. And just observe. Feel the difference in temperature of the air that goes out of your nostrils and comes in through your nostrils. Feel the temperature around you. Is it cold? Is it warm? Hear everything, including the people banging right outside my room. Smell the air around you. Try and keep your back straight without moving. You might feel like scratching. Don't. It's only a few minutes. Now, you will note that your mind will want to wander. Just say to yourself, don't go anywhere. Stay with me just for a little bit. Feel your body. All your feelings are alert. Through your tact, you can touch the clothes you're wearing, the clothes covering your body. You're aware of light and shadow. And observe your mind. Are there any thoughts? Don't choose any thoughts. Just acknowledge them. A thought, a memory, some sort of angst or a feeling, sensation. Just observe them. Keep your breathing steady and keep your back straight. Now, let's turn our attention to our breathing, again, through our nostrils, and noticing the difference in temperature of the air coming in through our nostrils and going out through our nostrils. Usually, the air going out is warmer, but you never know. Now, please place your hands together, palms together. And let's thank all life in heaven and on earth that allows us to be here together today, this afternoon in São Paulo. To some of you, it's late afternoon. Perhaps to some of you, it's even before noon, but such a blessing, isn't it? That this whole situation, this harmony between heaven and earth has placed us here together right now. If that wasn't the case, we wouldn't be here. And it makes us remember that we are life on earth. We're not separate from anything or anyone. We are the life on this tiny planet going around a tiny star. Poor little sun, a tiny little star. And we are endlessly going around it, 24 hours a day, going around it and around ourselves, turning day into night and 365 days going around the sun. Have you noticed that the earth never stops and therefore neither do we? Have you noticed that the earth never says, It used to be better before. I want to go back there. I'm feeling nostalgic. Or perhaps, does the earth accelerate things, speed up and says, let's put an end to this quickly? It doesn't. We're life. We go around in our own pace, which is the same of life on this planet. We're the same. We're kept alive by everything that exists. We're interconnected to everything, everyone, in a web, in a never-ending network. We are that network. No one is out of that network. And when you realize that, care blooms inside you, and you care about everything around you, not just about other people. I'm going to care for the environment as if it were a different entity. It's not. We are part of that environment. Our flesh and bones are part of the environment. It's part of all kinds, all forms of life. So everything that's happening on the planet right now is happening to us. Whether it be joy, whether it be sadness, everything that dies means a part of us dies. Every single life is important. Human life, all forms of life. Each single life matters. And we feel the pain of everyone who gets sick, everyone who dies. We feel the joy of every birth, of every healing. And we realize that we are connected to everything and everyone. That's why we look after the environment and our skin and bones, because if we are not well, we can't look after anything else. And by looking after ourselves and finding that balance, that presence, we make it easier for other beings to find their own point of balance and to be present in the moment. If somebody offends us, not offending them back makes a difference. Our natural reaction would be somebody pushes you, you push them back. But let's not push them back. Let's try and think about it. Why did that person push me? Perhaps they're not feeling well. Can I play with that person instead of pushing them back? Like capoeira, the Brazilian martial art, it's a dance. You play with your opponent without attacking them, without offending them. We're all hurt by the pandemic. The pandemic is going through us. We're going through it, but it is also going through us. It's cutting us inside. It's hurting us. But we're finding ways of dealing with it. We are finding ways of dealing with the pain, with the sadness, with the anxiety by being present in the moment.
Yeah.
Conscious breathing is the key to transformation. I like to say it's a golden key. It's a gift that allows you in anywhere. Breathe. If we think of Floyd a few weeks ago, what was he saying? I can't breathe, because somebody was pushing his neck down with his knees. There was another police person here in São Paulo who pressed his boot on the neck of a lady, and she said the same thing. I need to breathe. And sometimes we don't realize breathing is a gift. We can breathe without the help of any devices. And breathing is absolutely delicious. Pay attention to that air coming into you. It's not one thing after the other. It all happens together. Your chest opens up and air comes in. It contracts and air goes out. And we can do that and appreciate breathing at the same time, because breathing makes our body work. It brings oxygen into each cell of our body. It brings oxygen into our brain so that we can have responses that are more suitable to every single provocation that comes in our direction in the world. To respond to that love and care, to everything around us, to everything we are, because we are that life. We cannot live without the other forms of life. You know, the indigenous traditions call people trees. We are trees. We are a people, and we can't just think about human people. We can't cut ourselves off from reality as humans and leave the rest of life outside. We are life. We need to expand our consciousness, because that is nothing but going back to our original consciousness. We are all part of everything. Every time we breathe, we take in all life and the universe. These oxygen particles with CO2, with all the pollution that comes with it, where does it come from? Where has it been? Other forms of life have been through it. It has been through other forms of life. If you take a handful of dirt, you know that that handful of dirt has been a person, it has been animals, it has been rocks, it has been the sky, it has been the air, and now it's a handful of dirt. And that handful of dirt is you. It's us. There is no such thing as anthropocentrism. We are not the center of the universe. We are but one form of life. We talk about biocentrism. Life is at the center of life. So when we leave that smaller self and you make yourself available to the universe, you are blessed by all forms of life that are within you, and that you allow yourself to be within them. That is what it means to be present in a moment of pain, of suffering. Coronavirus is going around. COVID-19 is still around. We are part of this wild world. We do not respect other forms of life. Causes and conditions. That is what Buddhism is all about. And they affect us, but we can change all that. We can change those effects. And that is what we do with our life, with our thoughts, and with what we do in the world.
If I'm anxious, if I'm nervous, if I worry about all this anxiety all the time, I'm not present in the here and now. If I'm not present in the here and now, I'm not acting properly. So that's what I'm offering you. Conscious breathing. This is not meditating. Meditating starts from that, comes from that. This is the beginning of meditative praxis. Meditation is to know yourself intimately. But the basis is focus, full attention. And that starts with conscious breathing, which gives us balance. And I really like this gesture. And that's how we need to greet people when we see them. It's not elbow to elbow. We don't hit elbows. In Portuguese, when you talk about the elbow, you're actually referring to envy. The best way to greet someone is my right side and my left side coming together. My left hemisphere and my right hemisphere are in harmony. Orient and Occident, East and West come together. They don't oppose each other, they complement each other. And we see this complement in light, night and day, and light and darkness. Presence, pure presence. Pure presence is like knowledge. It's entirely yours. The greatest present that I can give you is my presence. I'm not divided. I'm not looking elsewhere. I put my palm to my palm, and I'm fully present for you. With this very act, you do nothing. You do nothing that would call that nothing greater than the very simple gesture of putting your hands together. It's pure presence. It's a basic principle of being present and full. And that is my answer to you.
Thank you, Coen. That was an incredibly rich response and inspiring at the same time as welcoming us and grounding us into this session. You talked about how this is a moment where many of us might be experiencing anxiety and fear and other strong emotions. And I was wondering if you could help us understand how we can welcome those feelings and be with these feelings in this moment of time.
It's true. Sometimes we want to ignore our feelings. But we can feel everything. What we need to feel is in nature. There is Thich Nhat Hanh, a monk that I very much admire, Thich Nhat Hanh. And he welcomes all of his feelings. He says, and I really like this, he says, hidden away, way deep down, we have lots of ugly feelings. We think they're ugly feelings. We hide them away. We put them in the basement. But suddenly they show up in the living room. But they weren't invited. They just pop into the living room and says, wait a second, this is not good. This is not good. But you have to recognize that these come from you. This is part of my nature. This is part of me. I'm going to embrace this. Look, imagine it's anger. Imagine that you want to fight. But you recognize it. You say, hey, my little anger, my sweet little anger, come here, come into my arms, come into my lap. I'm going to sing to you. I'm going to sing you a song to fall asleep. You were precious in this moment. And if you didn't have this feeling and if this sensation, if I hadn't felt like this, I probably wouldn't do any social actions because I was so frustrated by the lack of justice in the world, by the racism, everything that is damaging that we see. I was frustrated, angry, but that was a leverage for me to seek transformation and change. At this moment, it's not necessary because I recognize that there are other ways to deal with it. Active nonviolence is an excellent way to change reality. My anger exists. It's there. It's present. I recognize it. But I warm it. I embrace it. I say, look at how beautiful you are. My dear anger, come into my arms. Stand by my side. Let's find a way to work together to resolve this. Anxiety is the same thing. I'm not here. I'm not present. I want something to happen right away. I'm looking forward to something happen. I want the pandemic to end. I want the world better. I want it to be better faster. I want everybody to wake up. I want everything to wake up. I want everyone to get up. But that means actually looking at the world as it is. Reality is that transformation never changes. It's incessant. Our brain is incessant. Neural connections are pure electricity. Every feeling, every emotion is electricity. And it's great because when this hits you in your heart and your heart starts to beat, that's another type of energy. What happens? That's magnetism. When your thoughts makes your heart beat, you've got magnetism. It can be beneficial and it can be damaging. What do? What's your choice? When you realize that I'm really anxious, what's my breath like? Anxiety hits you high in the chest. You breathe heavily. You breathe quickly. Wait a second. You have to say, my breathing isn't cool. What do I need to do? Breathe in deeply. And I bring it down. I bring in the oxygen. And then I think and stop. I also like another example from Thich Nhat Hanh. When Vietnam, post-war, there was a guy who saw a boat full of people, 700 people, 700 families. That's ended up in Malaysia. And the Malaysian government said, I'm sorry, we have no more room for refugees. But Thich Nhat Hanh said, wait a second, let me see if I can convince the heads of state to accept them. And he wasn't able to do so, so he said, I'm going to go and protest in the main square. Please accept these refugees. Please come in. Please accept these refugees from Vietnam. They need your support right now. And many people went downtown and they supported him. And he thought, great, the government is now going to change its point of view. As soon as he got back to the hotel, they knocked on the door. Knock, knock, knock. He opens the door. Policeman. And the policeman says, "I'm sorry, sir. Here you go." He was living in France at the time. "Here you go. Here is your ticket to get back to Paris. Next flight out, you're no longer welcome here. Get on the plane and get out. These public protests are bothering our government." So a very wise man wouldn't fight with a policeman, right? Right? That's an intermediary. So he took the ticket and he was desperate. He was worried. He was concerned. Are you going to sit down and meditate at this point? No, because your energy's really active. You've got 700 families that may die if they don't come into the country. And he was worried, and he started pacing back and forth, and he called upon peace. "Come on, peace. Come into me, peace." He barely was able to breathe. It wasn't a personal anger. It wasn't internal anguish. I'm calling upon peace. I'm calling upon peace. Let peace come. And he walked and he breathed consciously. He was able to bring that level of anxiety and affliction and anguish down. And he remembered a little business card from an attaché that he had met some time ago. And he called that attaché from some other country and said, "Hey, this is what happened. Can you please help me? I need your help right now." And they said, yes, wait a second, I can help you. You're not going to go out for the first flight of the day. You're going to go out at noon, not 6 o'clock in the morning, but at 12. But what we're going to be able to do is that get food and water to these people so that they can try entering another port. We don't always get what we want the way we want it, but we can get the support that minimizes pain and suffering, and we have to try, and we have to ask for help. But if I am in this extremely nervous state, if I'm very anxious, I'm very angry, I can't even think. I won't be able to think about a rational way to find a path, to find a solution and a way out. And that's why we can't have rancor, anger, hate, desperation. We cannot fuel these. We have to find the path. If I'm not finding the path, it's because I haven't properly looked for the light at the end of the tunnel. I need to be more patient. I need to be more resilient. I need to support the insupportable and understand the causes and conditions for transformation and change to happen, not just within, but for all those around me. Yes, sometimes we're angry. People say the wrong things, saying rude things. We hear world leaders saying terrible things and swear words and saying, "How could you possibly say this?" And we're angry at them. But that anger doesn't help us at all. It's a thought. It's an attitude. It's a economic government attitude. Doctors, for example. It bothers us what they do. Everything they do can bother us. But this is our thoughts. These are our thoughts. We're all little babies, remember? We're all little babies. We're learning how to touch things, taste things, understand things. What happened to that baby within to turn into this person who hates, who suffers, who doesn't feel the love? What difficulties have happened to us? What lack of affection? Why haven't we developed this ability to love and to care? Are these people psychologically damaged? Do they have some sort of problem? We need to develop this empathy for what might have happened, that they fell from the path. The other guy over there, he's similar to me, not equal to me. Each of us is unique. Each of us is unique, but we're similar to our fellow human beings. When I recognize these similarities and I find a way to identify with other people, I'm not angry, I'm not rancorous, I'm not sad. But what is the proper thought that will change and transform all of these confusions and confusing thoughts into something positive. If I'm stressed and angry, I won't find this point of balance. This, again, is the leverage for change. I'm not just going to wait praying for change to come. I'm just going to meditate and change. It's going to happen. No, that's not how it happens. Just praying and meditating doesn't do it. You've got to roll up your sleeves. You've got to find partners, people with the same purpose and proposals, and then understanding other people's thoughts that may be different from mine will broaden and expand my consciousness. We all have blind spots. We can only turn one way or the other. We can't look behind us. We don't have eyes in the back of our heads. But there's someone behind me who says, hey, Roshi, there's something behind you. And I turn around and I look and I say, that's true. And I see things I didn't see before. So this partnership of meeting up with people who think differently enriches our lives. We don't want everybody thinking exactly the way we think. There are people who have done that in the history of humanity, and the outcome has not been nice. People who don't like different skin colors. There are people who pick up a cup of milk. You know what I'm saying when I say picking up a glass of milk? That racism, there are people that do that. We have different colors and skin tones and eyes and noses. Our bodies are different. We're a single family. We're biologically the human family. We could set up a home with people throughout the world and our children will still be children. That's a biological family. We recognize each other through our eyes. It's our eyes, more than our smiles, more than our skin. It's through our eyes. And now that we need to use our protective masks, it's great because we have to greet each other looking at each other's in the eye. And you can see sadness and love and all the emotions in their eyes. And we recognize this not because we're better, but because we're similar. We recognize the humanity in our fellow humans, and we can help each other. We can help someone who is similar to me and help them overcome difficulties with a little bit more levity and do as much good as possible. So let's no longer be stressed and anguished, and look to complement each other, to be present, using our human intelligence to solve issues, but remaining tranquil and calm without rancor and anger, violence, wars, and insults. People often protest and they use really heavy language. I disagree with that approach. We can protest. In fact, we can protest in silence. Imagine an entire multitude of people walking in silence. How beautiful would that be? Look at us. If you don't see us, we can live another way. There are other ways to live and to manifest, to express ourselves, to play. There's so many ways of being. So don't cultivate anger and hatred. And they exist, and we're going to embrace them. Again, we're going to bring them in and cradle them in our arms. It's part of our human nature. Everything that's human, I recognize because it's mine. I recognize the other in myself, and I embrace it. And in embracing it, I transform it. I don't fight it. I don't set up an iron fist and fight it. I welcome it in, and I return it respectfully, with dignity, and with calm. These are just my suggestions. Thank you so much, Coen Roshi. I'd now like to ask Jayro, our dear Jayro. You were talking about the Ubuntu school in Bahia, which is surrounded by nature. What inspirations can we find from African philosophy? what inspirations, what can we learn from African philosophy about how we are part of nature? Ubuntu is our connection with nature, this nature that is within each one of us, so that we can better understand our interdependence. And by understanding our interdependence, how can we help each other better and more at this moment? So that we don't hold on to all of these terrible emotions that Coen Roshi just mentioned. I understand that for our minds to be at ease with ourselves, we need to understand that the universe and humanity is divided into two parts that we as men and women need to resolve as quickly as possible, especially in this moment of coronavirus. These assumptions fuel xenophobia, and these assumptions and others that fuel xenophilia, love of others and hatred of others. This harmonious vision is critical for all of us. And when we look at African philosophy, specifically Ubuntu, which we've heard a lot about in academic and literary circles recently, specifically in sub-Saharan Africans who were brought over to the Americas. These assumptions is that I am because you are. We will never find ourselves in this xenophobic individuality. This separation is something that we've pursued, is something we need to recognize. When I look at the traps that the modern world has established, I see that we've developed a number of devices on which we support ourselves. And we ignore this xenophilia, this love of the other, with these assumptions. And here I am among the nature, but still in the metropolitan region of Salvador. And I lived many years in very big cities, Curitiba, and in southern Brazil, and in the area of Itapirica, which is the rural area of Salvador. I lived there till I was about 14 or 15 years old, and then left to go study in the big city. And we understood that we were an intrinsic part of this natural environment. And when we look at the cosmovision according to African philosophy, we understand that human beings are part of this environment, part of this setting. And I really like the Jewish tradition saying that the body is a sacred territory. And the Africans have always said that. Without dichotomies, without that we understand this duality because you are existential plenty. And we need to rescue this basic principle of humanity. Take care of our fellow human beings because you understand how important you are in this this whole human collective. This is the African point of view and the point of view of many indigenous communities. Nobody feels alone. When we look at xenophilia as a philosophy, loving the other, we look at what is rational. We look at freedom and autonomy and how we need to act towards others in this dynamic of being and acting in the world. We understand and we perceive how we need to be in this world. It's different from this antagonistic, manichaeistic, rational point of view where I am here and you are there. I need to say that humanity came from Africa. Everybody came from Africa. For a number of reasons, history, people left, and there were great transformation, there was great change. But we have this understanding that humanity was born there, that it's an ancestral point of view. When you look at the science and this Western rational thought, it doesn't understand this complexity of humanity, this existential complexity. Coronavirus, for me, has shown me that we need to ask, once again, this great question: what were we? What are we doing? And how can we go back to what we were? Those of us who ask these questions are not going to necessarily spend money with therapists and things that you have in the Western world to figure out these conflicts and stress points and understanding these existential doubts. If we can recover these basic assumptions for the essence of humanity, this is what we all need as humanity, especially right now where we're facing this pandemic like so many other pandemics. Racism is a pandemic. Social inequality, making it a hierarchy of life, this existential hierarchy, just as xenophobia, also a problem. Those who work with people need to orient themselves according to this, not look for their north, but look for their south. How are we going to look for our south? Not look for our north, how are we going to look for our south? Just like my colleague there said. And this is where we stand right now. For example, how can we think about the future of humanity? How could we, fathers, mothers, children, How can we notice that our children, our grandchildren need to think about a different type of education, and in this process of pregnancy, while you're going to the doctor, you don't just go to the doctor, but you should also look at your ancestors and look back to your history. And and when we look back at our ancestors, we've got this connection to our past and to our future.
So those are potential elements from birth, from pregnancy, which will come. They are yet to come. They will become. They will become unequal. They will become fuller during life, while men and women become people. That's why we need to think about that now. We need to think about what we were, what was done to us, what we can go back to being. I think that is the best mental health humankind can have, to ask great questions, to perhaps get out of this rut, to get rid of all this sadness that affects us, that makes us feel terrible feelings without any ideological vision or being sentimental about it. We need to think about a different dynamics for being, for seeing, for being in the world. I'm 70 years old, for instance. I've just turned 70. And I feel like I am rebuilding myself. It's an endless process. I am an unfinished being. There are different paths we can take, and I'm choosing paths that are beneficial to me, and not just to me, because we cannot be individualistic like the West, because I think that's probably the main path that we have been taking or helping people to take. And that leads to inequality, to racism, to trepidation, to anger, to hate. We need to think of humans as non-dual beings, as non-manichaeistic beings. So, because what kind of vision of the world is that? That's it, you know? There are other possibilities. There are other options. And we can go back to being something else. There are other paths, and that applies to all humankind. So I just want to conclude by saying that we must meditate, Coen Roshi, on all that. We need to reflect on all that. And all of that comes from an indigenous and African perspective. You do things by being. You don't think separately. Thinking and being are the same thing. They are one thing. And it's all about how you behave before life, before existence. According to African philosophy, when you think, you will remember those who came before you, those who are here now, and those who are yet to come. And that's a dynamics of life, of existence, which to me, every time we think about things like we're doing now, we're here thinking about life and existence. And when we do that, we'll leave here feeling much happier, because when you leave here, you will be much more willing to change your perspectives for new ones. And that, I think that's the challenge posed to humankind as a whole. Thank you. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Wellington. Thanks, everyone. I'd like to conclude my comments by thank you by saying adopé in Ubuntu, in Yoruba, and to say that the only reason I am is because you are, each one of you. Without you, I cease to be. That's what existence is all about. And that's what Africans think like, and the indigenous peoples as well. Like Monja Coen said, Coen Roshi said, we can all make contributions, and humankind needs to think about that. That which joins us makes us one. So we need to take the different views of the world from different civilizations, the contribution from past civilizations, and move forward, because humankind needs a new path. Ashe, thank you so much. Adupe.
Jayro, thank you. So I think we have time for one last question. And Coen, maybe we can put this question to you. Many of the people on this webinar come from the field of social change and are deeply engaged in society. And we can always feel like we need to be doing more and that we're not doing enough. I wonder if you can talk to us a little bit about feeling more comfortable and happy with what we can do. And you just need to take off your mute.
The first thing I want to say to you is do more. If you feel like you're not doing enough, then you should do more. That's the first thing that comes to mind. But the second one is that a lot of people tend to overdo it. They're doing as much as they can, and they still think, no, I need to do more. I need to do more. That's a different kind of anxiety, right? And sometimes people hurt themselves. They keep blaming themselves, and they end up doing less because they want to do more. Such beautiful words by Jayro. The thought that you need to do and do more because society needs me to do more and more. And you let yourself drown into that thought. And that's not beneficial to anyone. And you'll end up getting lost in trying to affect social change because you will be enmeshed in thinking, I need to produce, I need to do more. If I don't do more, what's going to happen? So we need to be aware of that. You need to be aware of your limitations. You need to be aware of up to a point you can go mentally, physically, even spiritually, but those limitations should not box you in. Oh, I can only do that. No, that's not what it's like. Those limitations can be stretched, but you shouldn't push them. It's almost like you take a lizard and you want to open the caterpillar so that it turns into a butterfly more quickly. You're going to kill both if you do that. So careful with what you do. Do your best. And that's why I usually say, if you don't know yourself, how do you know what your limitations are? If you haven't looked inside, how do you know who you are? These are wonderful questions. Who were we? Who are we now? And where are we going? Who am I? What is my physical ability to actually do things? How many hours a day am I able to work? And there's another beautiful thing. We are time. We fight against time and you become time, because if you're present, if you are aware of your needs, you will know when it's time to have a drink of water, when it's time to go to the restroom, when it's time to sleep, and how much sleep you need, so that you have the right ability to respond to the world the following day. We do make plans, we have projects for the short term, for the midterm, for the long term. We have all that, don't we? But we don't want all of that to happen now. We can't push it to happen now. And you can't push yourself to do more than you can. But that does not mean you should settle. Don't settle. It's very subtle. Those who settle oh, I've done as much as I can. That's it. I've done everything I can do today. I'm not going to think about it anymore. The founder of my order comes from the 13th century in Japan. And I've been reading something he wrote over the past few days. His name is Gyoji. He's Japanese. And he talks about restless practice. Our life is an endless practice. And if you practice endlessly, it doesn't necessarily mean you won't get any sleep, you won't eat. It doesn't mean that you don't need to pamper yourself every now and again. We all do. All humans need affection, warmth. So you can't throw it all up in the air just because you're taking care of social. And because that will mean you'll end up destroying yourself. Jayro lives in Salvador. And once I attended a meeting, a religious meeting with other Brazilians, religious people. It was by the Catholic Church. A Benedictine nun, who's a friend of mine, invited me. I stayed with them. Everybody wanted to attend the meeting, but there was one who always stayed home, and she was really upset because she wanted to go to the meeting too, but it was her day to stay back, and she would wait for everybody to come back and tell her what happened during the meeting. And it was all very beautiful. And I found it fascinating because most people were women. This was a meeting for Brazilian religious people, both men and women, but most people were nuns, women, mothers, and I started to see a social revolution that came from women who live in underprivileged areas. Some of them might be usually mixed up with people who come from very needy areas. Some of them were highly intellectual. Some of them were highly educated. They attended university. They had master's degrees, postdoc degrees, and they had no teeth. They didn't look after their bodies. Some of them were ill because they were looking after other women, the women who surrounded them. And they also identified with the women around them. I thought that was very interesting because you can relate to people, but you don't have to be like them. You don't have to overdo it. You don't have to go that far. Yes, I am like you, and because I am like you, I will look after you, but I am not going to feed on trash, but I will find ways to help you make food so that you don't have to look for food in the trash on the street. In my order in New York, there was a monk who used to work with an upper middle class community. It was a very beautiful temple in a very well-off area in New York. And in the morning, he saw the baker coming, and he was interested in the baker. And the baker said to him, I live in a very violent, poor area. Everybody carries a gun. There are always shootings. And he decided to move there. He sold everything, bought a small house, and started working in this violent community with homeless people. He's passed on now, but his disciples organize retreats for people to feel like the homeless. They're only allowed to take an ID card. They're not allowed to take any money with them. They sleep on the streets, and they're not allowed to take anything. Nothing but what they're wearing and an ID card. So these groups of people get together every day to pray, to check if everything's okay, and they learn a lot. They did it in Sao Paulo, they did it in Rio, and they learn a lot from it.
When you find people, Jayro said, when you find people, you need to find people that make you. I am made of others. I am made of the other people that I meet up with. And in Zen Buddhism, it would say, you walk away from the small I into the big I. How much money you have in the bank, what you're doing, what you studied, what you didn't study. It's just a week, though. It's just a week, though. They know, however, that they're going to go back to their houses. They have houses. They're going to go back home with their food. But this is a small excursion into another world. And people say, be careful. There are lots of mice. Don't sleep here. It's very scary. There's cockroaches, there's mice, there's whatever. And they start to realize that the simplest, most humble, poorest people were the ones who took the best care of them. They explained where they could ask for food, where they could go to the bathroom. A lot of them were very ashamed. They didn't want to ask. Upper middle class people asking for help, asking for money. No. And they had to put that aside. If you need it, they were taught, ask. And they realized that if you ask, sometimes you will receive. You will. Look at how this work is interesting. Look at how this mixes with the philosophy of Zen Buddhism. I love what Jayro said. When you talk about African philosophies, I understand them. In Brazil, it's very hard to find something outside Greco-Roman philosophy, as if other worlds didn't exist. Asia, Africa, these philosophies are completely ignored in our institutions of learning, and that's so sad because they're so enriching. You find it in the United States at universities there, in Canada or in France, but in Brazil, sadly, there's a lot of resistance to embracing philosophies from other continents, which enrich our understanding and can be very good to learn about. So that's what we do. We broaden our consciousness. We open up so that we become complete and full. We don't want things to when things are good, we never want them to end. When things are bad, we want it to end right away. But well-being and being happy and feeling complete has to do with this. Has to do with this feeling of it's so good, I don't want it to be over. In another interreligious meeting, there was a proposal for banks to help us. But there was a Japanese monk from a different order who was there with us that day. And when they said Brazil, there's a lot of social differences, there's a lot of poverty, a lot of discrimination, it's very difficult. And he said, how good for us that we'll be able to do something about it. Look, the country is giving us the opportunity to change reality. Instead of complaining that it's terrible, he said, great, look at where we were born, look at where we are, and look at what we can do so that it gets better. But this about what we can do includes you. Don't pull yourself out of it. You are the other. You are your social work. You need to be healthy mentally and physically to be able to give back socially. Because if you ignore yourself and don't take care of yourself, if you push the limits, you will no longer be the change maker and you will be absent and you won't be able to help. You won't have your mental faculties with you. You won't have your physical faculties to be able to help others. So we need to perceive and understand at what point we need to stop and step back. I use zazen, za, accept, zen, meditate. Sit and deeply meditate. Sit and meditate deeply. This came from India. This came from you, Aaron, your lands. Siddhartha, back in India. One day, he heard about people who were suffering. He had no idea what suffering was. And he left his castle and he found old age and death and suffering. And he asked, is there any way to get rid of this? There are a number of practices to get rid of it. He said, I'm not going to sleep. I'm going to find a way out of this. And they said, no, the path is not this. The path is a path of harmony, respecting your own life, respecting your own needs to be able to help others. And so he meditates, has a mystical experience, which is he's no longer his separate self. He understands where he connects to everybody. We are a manifestation of everything. And we all manifest in a number of ways. You are this everything. You are this holiness. And each particle of your body and each particle around you and everything, it's all within you. But if you don't recognize this, if you don't understand intimately, and if you don't get in touch with that intimacy, you will be hurt, you will be pained, and you won't be able to do anything. So look within, look to yourself intimately. Look at our body, look at our minds. We don't understand them properly. We always want to study others, but to study others, you must first study yourself. And then you understand the communion with others. And you, by taking care of yourself, will be able to take care of others. And by taking care of others, you will be able to take care of yourself. Taking care of others, we are cared for. But you first need to recognize your life, your needs, what you actually can do and what you can't do. Don't demand too much. Perfectionism is a problem. It has to be perfect for me to do it. No, it does not. I know when to wait. I know when to stop. I know when to breathe. I know how to offer conditions so that others join in and also do. It's not just me doing. It's not just my ego. Freud would call it the ego, right? I, separate self. I, Superman. I, Superwoman. I doing. No. Bring it down a notch. We are all part of a big chain. We're all connections. We are all connections in a long chain. And that way we can do good. Recognize the space for others. Give space to others. Step back so that others can perceive and also do. So take care of yourselves. Each of you is precious and holy and perfect just as you are, even in your imperfection. Yet you can perfect yourselves more. You can ask just like Jayro said, question yourselves. Who am I? What am I doing here? What is life all about? How do I take care of myself? What does actually taking care mean? Without me up on top, I'm this big conscious being and I have this great intelligence. I'm going to take care of others. No, that's garbage. I recognize the other as myself, and that is why I take care of them, because they're similar to who I am. I feel their pain within. I feel what they're lacking and what they need within, because they're similar to who I am, not because I'm better than who they are, and I'm going to take care of people who are below me or in worse situations. No, you recognize human to human.
Thank you, Monja Coen. And I think we're coming to the close of our time together. So I think the first thing that we'd love to just express is thank you to Monja Coen and to Jayro. Wellington, I think you have a question for Jayro.
I have a question for you, Jayro. If you could share with us your practice of talking to your ancestors when things get difficult.
Wellington, actually, I don't think we have time for that because we have 2 or 3 minutes left. So I'm wondering if what we could actually do is ask Jayro if there is a chant or a blessing that he might have to close.
Jayro, Aaron would like to know if you'd like to have a chant or a closing blessing that we can take with us, so we can take your knowledge and keep it in our hearts. Can you hear me? I wake up every day at 4 o'clock and I greet nature and my ancestors. And it's a full moon right now. And so I'm going to do a Yoruba chant for the full moon. Just
olhos do mundo. Oxupá, Ojuorum, Ojumamã, Agualá, Olorum, Imbocé, Ojumamã, Eleie, Monjadié, Olojumamã, Eleie, Monjadié, Olojumamã, Oxupá, Ojuorum, Ojumamã, Agualá, Olorum, Imbocé, Ojumamã, Agualá, Olorum, Imbocé, Ojumamã. Quem podia cantar todo mundo? Agualá, Olorum, Imbocé, Ojumamã, Agualá, Olorum, Imbocé, Ojumamã. Então, esse é um canto que a gente agradece, entrega a nossa vida, a nossa existência junto com a dinâmica cosmológica da existência, tendo a Lua como os olhos do mundo, que orienta e que leva a gente para frente. É isso.
Obrigado. I'd love to just ask that we all say thank you to the wonderful Monja Coen, to the wonderful Jayro, and to Wellington, who's co-hosted today. So what I'd love to ask is if you could take off your mute, actually, as you sign off, and maybe we could, just as we sign off, just say thank you to them.
Thank you.
Obrigada.
Gente, obrigada. Tchau. Tchau, Monja.
Tchau. Axé, do pé.
Axé, do pé.
Obrigada.
Juliane. Vera Cordeiro.
Axé, muito axé.
Obrigada. Obrigado. Obrigado pela existência de todos vocês. Obrigado.
Axé.
Obrigado, axé.
Just to be gentle with our wonderful guests, though, we will be closing it in not too long, but it's wonderful to see everyone.
Nice to be with you.
Também quero agradecer muito essa oportunidade desse encontro e quero agradecer a presença de todos vocês. Aaron, obrigado pela oportunidade. Monja Coen, Jayro, obrigado por todos os ensinamentos e a toda a equipe que faz esse encontro acontecer também, que está aqui traduzindo. Nossa gratidão.
Thank you for the translators. We're so grateful. You made this day so much more special. Wellington starts with the word well. You're right. My name starts with the word well. It's great to see you once again. It's wonderful to see you too. It's an honor. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
And Wellington, I think
it was wonderful to meet Jayro. I've been following Coen Roshi for many years now. I'm older than you. Okay? Oh, that's probably the best part. I think I'm just a bit older.
I definitely can't get in on this conversation about being older than everyone else, but I want to echo what Wellington said about really saying thank you to a few people. The members of our team who've been supporting this have just been incredible. Robin, thank you for making magic happen and weaving this all together. And then the marvelous group of translators. It's been absolutely incredible having this support. And so thank you. This is actually the last of our Wellbeing webinars in this series. We'll be back in October with something new.